Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. And today we're going back in time, back to ancient Rome, right to the heart of the Colosseum. You can almost hear the roar of the crowd, right? Feel that sand beneath your feet. But we're not here for the spectacle itself. No, no. We're here for the fuel, the diet that kept those legendary gladiators going. And you might be surprised to learn that it wasn't all about just massive slabs of meat. Like you think, gladiator, gotta have tons of meat.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? What's really fascinating about the gladiator diet is how strategic it was, almost scientific in its approach to building strength and endurance. Take their nickname, for example. Gladiators were sometimes called hortidari, which literally means barley men.
Barley men. I mean, that doesn't exactly sound intimidating, does it? Barley men. Like, come on.
Uh-huh, right. It doesn't strike fear in the heart, but barley was a total powerhouse grain. It
Hmm.
wasn't just cheap and readily available, but it was ideal for what these warriors needed, an early form of carb loading.
Hmm.
Barley provided that long-lasting energy for those absolutely brutal combats.
So it was more than just like filling their stomachs. It was a calculated choice to eat barley.
Yeah, exactly. You got it.
Yeah.
It also helped them build up a layer of fat, which, believe it or not, acted as protection during combat. It was like wearing a natural suit of armor underneath their actual armor.
That is really interesting. So are we talking about like just basic barley soup here, or was it something more elaborate? What were they doing with this barley?
Well, their meals were likely pretty simple but effective. We're talking about ancient Rome here. It's not like they had fancy blenders or Instant Pots or anything. And this dietary choice, wasn't just some random idea. Respected physicians, you've probably heard of them, like Galen and Pliny the Elder, considered the experts of their time. They documented the benefits of barley extensively. They understood that link between diet and performance, and they recognized barley as, absolutely key for endurance.
Wow. Okay. So barley for stamina and padding. Makes sense. But are you ready for this? Apparently, gladiators also drank ash. You heard that right? Ash.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, I know, right? Sounds crazy. But there's evidence suggesting they mixed vegetable ash with water and drank it. This wasn't some weird, ritual or anything. It was actually kind of the smart way to boost bone strength and healing. You see, vegetable ash, it's rich in calcium and other minerals, so it basically acted like an ancient mineral supplement.
So they were like way ahead of their time, in terms of bone health, like centuries ahead. Is there any actual proof that this worked, this ash thing?
Yeah, actually there is. Skeletons of gladiators unearthed in Turkey showed high levels of strontium in their bones, and that's a mineral that's, commonly found in plant ash. So this kind of suggests that they weren't just guessing, you know what I mean? They knew what they were doing with this ash stuff. It wasn't just random.
All right, now let's talk about meat. You'd think a gladiator's diet, right, would just involve like mountains of meat, tons of it. But turns out that's a big misconception.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Meat was more of a luxury back then, a real status symbol. So gladiators actually relied on more affordable, readily available sources, for their protein and energy. They weren't eating steak every day.
So what were they eating instead of, steak and burgers? If they weren't eating tons of meat,
Mm.
what was like their go-to protein source?
Legumes, primarily, like beans, lentils, chickpeas. Those were staples of their diet. And they're packed with protein and fiber, which are essential for,
Mm.
building and repairing muscle and keeping them feeling full and energized, keeping those gladiators going.
It's amazing, isn't it, how this lines up with modern sports nutrition. We still emphasize those complex carbohydrates for sustained energy, not just for athletes, but for, anyone looking for stamina and
It
focus.
really is. And Galen, that physician we talked about, well, he believed that too much meat could actually hinder athletic performance. It's kind of funny to think how that advice might go over with a modern day bodybuilder. Don't eat meat.
So gladiators were all about like plant-based protein. That's pretty surprising, honestly. But even warriors, right? They need a quick energy boost now and then. I mean, gotta fuel up before you fight a lion. So what did they reach for, when they needed a snack? What was their like go-to snack?
Dried fruits were like their go-to snack. Figs and dates, especially.
Yeah.
Readily available, easy to carry, and packed with those natural sugars for that, quick energy boost. And plus, they were easy on the digestive system, which is important when you're, about to go into combat.
That makes a lot of sense and way healthier than like some of the energy bars you see today, right? Like who knows what's in those things. But what about recovery? After a brutal fight, they must have needed something to help their bodies bounce back. Like what did they eat after a fight?
Well, Galen, our ancient medical expert, he observed that dried fruits were also great for speeding up recovery after intense physical exertion. He believed they, helped with digestion and overall well-being. It's amazing, really, how much they understood about the connection between food and the body, even back then.
It really is. It makes you wonder, like, what else we can learn from them about, nutrition and health. We've covered barley, ash, legumes, dried fruit. What else was on the Gladiator menu? What else were they eating?
Well, there's one more kind of surprising item, cabbage. And it wasn't just like a side dish for them. They believed it had, powerful healing properties.
Cabbage. Really? I mean, I know it's good for you, but I don't, usually think of it as like a superfood. Like, eat your cabbage, get strong.
Well, the Romans, they believed that it could like literally speed up wound healing. And Pliny the Elder, that other historical health guru we mentioned, he praised its ability to, restore stamina.
So maybe it is a superfood. Huh. They were eating cabbage for healing, barley for endurance, ash for strong bones. I mean, their diet was surprisingly sophisticated for, ancient Rome.
Yeah, it really was. And, let's not forget about flavor. They weren't just eating like bland gruel all the time. They used garlic and onions too for flavor. And turns out for good reason, they were pretty clever.
I have to admit, garlic and onions aren't the first things that come to mind when I, picture ancient Roman cuisine.
Maybe not, but they were like clever additions.
Yeah.
They were known to improve blood circulation, which is crucial for, any athlete, especially those facing, life or death situations in the arena.
So their diet wasn't just about like survival, just eating to live. It was carefully designed to optimize their performance in the arena.
Exactly. And to really understand this, I think we need to look beyond just the food itself and consider the people behind the meals. The Laniste, the gladiator trainers.
Right, right. Those were like the guys in charge of making sure the gladiators were in top shape.
Right.
Making sure they were ready to fight.
And they weren't just trainers. I mean, they were businessmen. They invested a lot of their gladiators. And that included, providing the best possible diet to ensure that they were strong and capable of performing well.
Yeah.
You got to remember, a successful gladiator meant a profitable gladiator.
Yeah.
Right? For the Lanista. So they had to keep them healthy and strong.
So it wasn't just like, a random assortment of food. It was like a carefully planned system, a system for success.
Exactly. They had skilled cooks, often slaves, who prepared meals according to very specific, dietary guidelines. It was like a structured system, aimed at maximizing performance, like a well-oiled machine.
Almost like, a modern-day sports team, with their nutritionists and chefs, carefully planning every meal.
Yeah, very similar. And just like in modern sports, there was like a hierarchy, even when it came to food. So the higher-ranking gladiators, the, superstars, they would have received better food, more meat, maybe some dairy. Think of it as the ancient Roman equivalent of like endorsement deals.
Yeah, so the better you fought, the better you ate. Seems fair. But despite that hierarchy, it sounds like the overall approach to diet was, about balance and performance, not just like indulgence. It was about making them the best gladiators they could be.
That's right. And historical accounts back this up. The historian Appian, he described gladiator diets as being, carefully managed to ensure strength, endurance, and recovery.
Yeah.
It really shows like how advanced their understanding of nutrition was, even back then in ancient Rome.
So we've debunked some myths, explored the benefits of, barley and ash, and even discovered the importance of cabbage in ancient Rome. Who knew? But what does this all mean for us today? Should we all be, like, adding ash to our smoothies and swapping out protein bars for figs?
Well, maybe not the ash, but there are definitely some lessons we can learn from, the gladiator diet. It's really fascinating to see how their emphasis on, whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables aligns with the principles of modern sports nutrition. Like, it really shows you that some things never change.
Yeah, it seems like they were onto something with their simple but effective approach to, fueling their bodies.
Absolutely. And it's a good reminder that healthy eating is, like, timeless. Those ancient principles of prioritizing, whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables are still super relevant today. I mean, we might not be facing lions in an arena, but we can all benefit from a diet that, fuels our bodies and our minds for whatever challenges we face, whether it's, a tough workout or a busy day at work, or even just, dealing with the kids.
It really makes you think about how our modern diet compares, doesn't it? Like, if you were transported back to ancient Rome and, like, had to follow this gladiator diet, what do you think would be the hardest part for you? Like, what would you miss the most?
That's a great question. I mean, it's easy to romanticize the past, but I think for me, the lack of variety would be a big challenge. We're so used to having such a wide array of foods available to us. Back then, they had to, make do with what was in season and what they could access locally. So, no more going to the grocery store and having 10,000 different options.
I can definitely see that. Imagine a life without chocolate or coffee. Just thinking about it makes me want to, reach for a snack.
Yeah, it really makes you appreciate the abundance we have today, doesn't it? But, maybe that limited variety, in a way, it contributed to the gladiators' mental toughness. You know what I mean? Like their diet wasn't just about physical strength and resilience. It required a lot of discipline and adaptability. It was like a mindset thing.
That's a great point. It wasn't just about the food itself. It was about the mindset it cultivated. So as we, wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of gladiator diets, what's the biggest takeaway you hope our listeners, walk away with? Like, what's the one thing you want them to remember?
I think it's important to remember that, healthy eating, it's timeless. Those ancient principles of prioritizing, whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables, they're still relevant today. We might not be, facing lions in an arena, but we can all benefit from a diet that fuels our bodies and minds
Yeah,
for whatever we do in our lives.
absolutely. It's a great reminder that we don't need, complicated diets or expensive supplements to, like, eat well. Sometimes the simplest foods, are the most powerful. Big thanks to you for sharing your expertise and for taking us on this journey back in time to ancient Rome.
It was my pleasure. I always enjoy, exploring those connections between history and modern life. It's fascinating to see how things connect.
And to all our listeners, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What surprised you the most about the gladiator diet? What would be, your biggest challenge if you had to eat like a gladiator? Head over to our social media and let us know using #GladiatorGrub. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Figs and dates, mostly.
Yeah.
They were, readily available back then, easy to carry around, and packed with those natural sugars for, like, a quick energy boot.
Yeah.
Plus, easy on the digestive system, which is pretty important when you're about to, go into combat. You don't want to be dealing with stomach issues when you're fighting a lion.
Yeah, that's true. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And way healthier than, some of those energy bars they have these days. But what about recovery after a brutal fight? I mean, they must needed something to help their bodies, bounce back. What did they do for that?
Well, Galen, our ancient medical expert, he observed that dried fruits were also great for, like, speeding up recovery after intense physical exertion. He thought they helped with digestion and, overall well-being. It was pretty remarkable how much they understood about, like, the connection between food and the body, even back then.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it really makes you wonder what else we can learn from them about, diet and health and all that. So we've covered barley, ash, legumes, dried fruit. What else was on the menu? What else were those gladiators eating?
Well, there's one more kind of surprising item, cabbage. And it wasn't just, like, a side dish for them. It was believed to have, like, powerful healing properties.
Cabbage, really. I mean, I know it's good for you, but I don't usually think of it as a, a superfood.
Yeah, well, the Romans, they believed that it could actually speed up wound healing. And Pliny the Elder, that other historical health guru we mentioned, well, he praised its ability to, restore stamina. He was a big fan of cabbage.
So maybe it is a superfood. Huh. They were eating cabbage for healing, barley for endurance, ash for, strong bones. I mean, their diet was surprisingly sophisticated for, ancient Rome.
It really was. And don't forget about flavor, too. They
Yeah.
weren't just eating, like, bland gruel all the time. They used garlic and onions, for flavor. And it turns out, for good reason. They were pretty smart about it.
I gotta admit, garlic and onions aren't the first things that come to mind when I, picture ancient Roman cuisine.
Right. But they were pretty clever additions to the diet because they were known to, improve blood circulation. And that's crucial for any athlete, especially those facing, life or death situations in the arena.
So their diet wasn't just about, survival. It was carefully designed to optimize their, performance.
Exactly. And to really understand this, I think we need to look beyond just the food itself and consider the people behind the meals, the Laniste, the Gladiator trainers.
Right, those were like the guys in charge of making sure the gladiators were, in top shape.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And they weren't just trainers, they were businessmen. They invested a lot in their gladiators. And that included, providing the best possible diet to ensure that they were, strong and capable,
Yeah.
performing well. You got to remember, a successful gladiator meant a profitable gladiator for the lanista. So they had to keep them healthy and strong if they wanted to, make money.
So it wasn't just a random, assortment of food. It was a carefully planned system to maximize their performance.
Exactly. They had skilled cooks, often slaves, who, prepared meals according to specific, dietary guidelines. It was like a structured system aimed at maximizing performance.
Almost like, a modern day sports team with their, nutritionists and chefs carefully planning every meal.
Yeah, very similar. And just like in modern sports, there was a hierarchy, even when it came to food. So, like, the higher-ranking gladiators, the superstars, they would have received better food, more meat, perhaps, and maybe some dairy. Think of it as the ancient Roman equivalent of, like, endorsement deals.
Right. So the better you fought, the better you ate. Seems fair. But despite that hierarchy, it sounds like the overall approach to diet was about, balance and performance, not just like indulgence. It was about, what would make them the best gladiators.
That's right. And historical accounts support this. The historian Appian described gladiator diets as being carefully managed to ensure, strength, endurance, and recovery. It
Yeah.
just goes to show how, like, advanced their understanding of nutrition was even back then.
So we've debunked some myths, explored the benefits of, barley and ash, and even discovered the importance of cabbage in ancient Rome. Who knew? But what does this all mean for us today? Should we all be adding ash to our smoothies and, swapping out our protein bars for figs?
Well, maybe not the ash, but there are definitely some lessons we can learn from the gladiator diet. It's fascinating to see how, their emphasis on whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables aligns with, like, the principles of modern sports nutrition. It shows you that, some things ever really change.
It seems like they were onto something with their, simple but effective approach to, fueling their bodies.
Absolutely. And it's a good reminder that healthy eating is, like, timeless. Those ancient principles of, prioritizing whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables still super relevant today. We might not be facing lions in an arena, but we can all benefit from a diet that fuels our bodies and minds, for whatever we do in our lives, whether it's, a tough workout or a busy day at work, or even just, dealing with the kids.
It really makes you think, right?
Yeah.
About how our, modern diet compares. If you were like transported back to ancient Rome and had to, follow this gladiator diet, what do you think would be the hardest part for you?
Oh, that's a good question. It's easy to, romanticize the past, but I think the lack of variety would be really tough. We're so used to having a huge selection of foods available, and back then they had to, make do with what was in season and what they could find locally.
Yeah, no kidding. Just imagine like a life without chocolate or like coffee. Just thinking about it makes me want to go grab a snack.
Right. Makes you appreciate what we have, huh? But, maybe that limited variety, in a way, it kind of contributed to their mental toughness.
Mm.
Their diet wasn't just about physical strength and resilience. It took discipline, adaptability, it was a whole mindset thing.
That's a really good point. It wasn't just about the food itself. It was about like the mindset that came with it.
Mm.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of gladiator diets, what's the biggest takeaway you hope our listeners, come away with?
I think it's important to remember that, healthy eating, it's timeless. Those ancient principles of, eating whole grains, legumes, fruits, vegetables, they're still relevant.
Yeah.
And important today. We might not be facing lions in an arena, but, we can all benefit from a diet that fuels our body and mind.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that we don't need, fancy diets or crazy supplements to eat healthy. Sometimes the simplest foods are the most powerful.
Yeah.
Well, huge thanks to you for sharing your expertise and taking us on this journey back in time.
My pleasure. It's always fun to explore these connections,
Uh-huh.
between history and modern life.
And to all of our listeners out there, we'd love to hear from you. What surprised you the most about the gladiator diet? What would be your biggest challenge, if you had to eat like a gladiator? Head over to our social media and let us know using #GladiatorGrub. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.